Astrology is demonic. Crystals are demonic. Yoga is demonic. Everything's freaking demonic, apparently. But have you ever questioned if maybe you're the demon? Let's talk about it. Hey everybody, I'm Mystic Brew, founder of Return to Self, where I help you remember who you were before the world taught you who to be. And this is Hot Girl Math, where we put together energetic equations and clues from the universe. And for today's episode, we are going to address a very common rhetoric that is running rampant right now, especially on social media, for those of us who choose to go an unconventional path. Maybe you've seen it on Threads, on Instagram, on Twitter, whatever else, but there is this ongoing dialogue that I keep seeing of people calling things that they don't practice demonic. Now, first and foremost, the word demon has been bastardized and very misconstrued, but we don't have time to talk about that right now. We also know what people mean when they say that, so we'll take that into this conversation since that's what's most important. It reminded me of an interview I saw maybe 2 years ago or so with John Edwards, who you may know as a psychic medium. And he was saying on the interview that he had, I don't know if it was a premonition or a vision or just some insight that came through, that in the coming years, there's going to be a heightened target around spiritual practitioners specifically. And I don't like to feed into the fear mongering or anything like that, but it was something that I just sort of put in my back pocket. Now listen, I am no stranger to the judgments and criticisms of people. And given what I do, that kind of got amped up a bit as well. And I'll talk more about that later when I share something that I wrote, which I mentioned on a previous episode. But today, as I was preparing for this video, this whole stream of consciousness started to come together around this rhetoric of labeling things as demonic. I know it may seem a little stupid to even address because it's like those of us who know, these are just conversations with people who are not allowing themselves to perceive anything beyond their own understanding, and so they demonize it. However, I think it's a little deeper than that, and it's worth talking about. I'm currently taking a course right now called Interdimensional Psychic Energy Healing with Cindy Dale. And today's class, we talked about clairaudience, which is clear hearing. It's one of the heightened senses, as well as the fifth dimension, as well as the fifth chakra, which is the throat. A lot of us who do this work, and by this work, I mean divination, I mean unconventional gnosis, I mean utilizing ancient practices and tools and wisdom to reconnect with the spirit of nature, of God, have oftentimes had to also go through a lot of healing with the throat. And that is not by accident. That is by design, because this is one of the target areas to suppress. Now, for those who don't know, the throat chakra is the fifth chakra. It is your chakra of obviously communication, but also listening. And it is also the bridge between the mind and the body. Now, when I was taking notes on today's class, which I'm going to share a little bit of it with you because we talked about verbal traumas and digital traumas, which is something that our generation is experiencing at a rapid level, which obviously other generations did not because they were not part of the digital age. But this sort of rhetoric around labeling things like this demonic folds into this in ways that I don't know people even comprehend. The throat chakra is how you express. Your expression is your gift from God. It is your soul signature. And it doesn't matter if it's your writing, your singing, your speaking, or just the way that you express yourself on a day-to-day level, not even necessarily creatively. That is a very intimate relationship that you are sharing with the world and making an imprint into the world. So, for those of us, even if you don't even do spiritual divination work, but you are someone who has always felt a little different. You're someone who maybe has felt like you don't fit the mold, that you're not normal, that you kind of go against the grain or see the world differently or see yourself differently or move in a way that creates a bit of fear to express yourself. This was probably closed for a long time. When you are not able to express yourself, you dim yourself. You become part of the background. And for many of us who have felt any of those things, that equated to safety for a long time. And so perhaps you create a persona, again, the shadow, you create a persona, an identity, a mask that you learned over time keeps you safe and protected in the environment that you're in. It may not be true to who you are. Perhaps you suppress a lot of who you are in order to maintain that persona so that you feel safe. A lot of times people forget that there is also the golden shadow within your shadow, and that's your power, that's your gifts, your talents that you minimize, that you suppress because you were never made to feel safe enough to express them openly and practice them. What we are experiencing with this rhetoric is a tale as old as time. It is a community of people who have decided through judgment, not through experience and knowing, that these things that don't align with their own ideology is automatically evil and demonic because it's different than them. Now, here's the thing. Are there people who do divination and who do this work that have malicious intent? Absolutely. Are there people who go to church every Sunday and also have malicious intent? Absolutely. This is the problem. We need to break out of these confinements and rigid beliefs that, oh, this person does this, therefore they're this. It's a very nice and clean equation. And I know a lot of people like to cling to things like that because it makes things easier to digest and it makes you feel a little safer in the world, but it's not realistic. You are creating a perception that is not rooted in truth and integrity. It is an illusion. It is a false belief that was fed to you that now you just unconsciously perpetuate in order to feel safe. So now it's not even you. You're hijacked. You can't even think for yourself. You are enacting the ideology that was implanted in you that you have not even questioned or asked yourself if you truly believe, because you want belonging, because you want to feel accepted. You want to feel validated. That's fair. That's a human need. I get it. But when it becomes dangerous, when it becomes abusive, which it is, now it's a problem. So we're experiencing this conversation that's going through social media. And I want to share with you some information from this class that I'm taking with Cindy Dale. Look her up. She's great. On digital and verbal traumas. When we talk about trauma and when we talk about abuse, we tend to automatically think of it as a physical experience, but it expands so far beyond just physical pain. That's just the most obvious one that you can see. But those of us who know understand that there is sexual trauma and abuse, there is emotional trauma and abuse, there is mental, psychological trauma and abuse, there is spiritual trauma and abuse, and there is verbal trauma and abuse, and digital now, thanks to the rise of the internet. And digital abuse and trauma is at an all-time high because of how much we rely on the internet and these social media platforms, and because of the false sense of safety it offers to people behind a phone and a screen to feel like they have the bravado and the boldness to say some of the most heinous things to a stranger on the other side of that screen. So let's talk about this. Verbal trauma or violence is the infliction of put downs, ridiculing, nastiness, and other forms of verbal trauma sent to you or undertaken in your presence. Digital trauma, which is grouped under verbal trauma and linked to other mentioned traumas, involves the manipulative, conscious or unconscious, use of a range of words or sounds to intimidate, take power and control, implement force, and coerce. Now, some important things to consider about verbal abuse. Verbal abuse is never deserved. It is a projection from the abuser. A projection. What does that mean? That means that I am projecting my own feelings onto you. And why do we do this? We do it because when we are carrying something heavy that we don't want to carry it anymore, we tend to just slough it off to the next person. We do this in relationships, we do this in family, we do this at work, we do this constantly unconsciously. It's one of the main alarm bells that the shadow is at work, projection. Verbal abuse is also statistically just as violent as physical abuse, leading to depression, anxiety, suicide, psychological collapse, and worse. It leads to a higher rate of developing narcissism, anger, instability, OCD, and paranoia. Badgering and battering impact the development of areas of the brain, and on a communal basis, verbal abuse includes all messages of racism, sexism, ethnic castigations, hate speech, and more. Now, digital trauma is associated with the following ideas, and that includes catfishing, shaming messages, and what appears on social media and all other media outlets, bot manipulation, overwhelm of emails, and other sources of contact, including EMF, toxicity. This is the traumatization through repetition, which accumulates stress in the nervous system. And this involves a level of energetic toxicity, which involves psychically, where you can pick up the negative self-talk of other people or the psychic projections of other people, the psychic influx, which leaves the other's energy littered in your own system, dark forces and entities that use attachments and holds on you, and becoming impacted by the gazillions of wave-like particles which carry through emails, the news, and any other information that you consume online. And something that's been coming up the last week is if the devil can't reach you, it'll reach what you consume, which is why this is very dangerous territory that we're in right now in the digital space. And if you saw those interviews with Benjamin Netanyahu, where he said that the war that we are experiencing, the strongest weapon in that war is social media. That's why they're putting so much money behind social media. That's why they bought TikTok. That's why they're always focused on Meta and Zuckerberg and all these tech bros, because this is the most valuable weapon. This is what alters your perception and plants seeds in your mind. This is what allows you to see the world in the way that they want you to see the world, if that's what they want, through the algorithm. And so some of us were called to be on this, even if we don't necessarily want to, because there's also the other side of the story that needs to be shared as well. So why am I talking about this digital verbal trauma? Because that trauma is what shuts down your throat. And when that shuts down your throat, it also shuts down your gifts, which is that clairaudience. Now, for those of you who don't know, clairaudience can come through in a multitude of ways. One of them is hearing another voice. It doesn't mean you're automatically crazy and psychotic. Sometimes we hear a voice that gives us guidance. Sometimes it's in our own voice, but we're not really sure where that's coming from. Sometimes it's through telepathy. Sometimes it's through mediumship. Sometimes it's through writing. That's a big one for me personally, whether that's automatic writing or guided writing. It's like there's something coming through. You're not quite sure where it's coming from, but it's coming through you in order to be shared, to be revealed, or even just for your own guidance and journey. And I'm going to share something that I wrote recently that had to do with this. The reason that I'm not taking this rhetoric and dialogue about this is demonic, is because we are also experiencing the reprimand against anyone that we deem as an alien. I don't know if you saw the White House post like this whole alien thing on their website with the lime green font and the black background and the really just like aesthetic of aliens, but they were talking about people. They were telling you to report aliens as in immigrants to ICE, but they are equating that to a non-human being, letting you know they don't even see them as human. But we all laugh and look away because the way that they do it is so stupid that we don't take it seriously. But this is really important information and dialogue that we have to pay attention to, because what they are actually saying is dangerous. They're telling you we don't even see these people as human and you need to report them. That's something you need to pay attention to. And if you think it's going to stop at immigrants, then you are not paying attention. This whole experience that we're having is highlighting the other, and the other is dictated by whoever is in power and decides you are not like me, therefore you are not anything important. You don't belong here, you don't deserve to be here, and I can do whatever I want with you. And that might seem an extreme to some, but that's the energy that we are continuously being shown, and then we either look away or we play it down as if there's no way that can happen. How could they do this in today's age? They're already doing it. They're already doing it. So now I'm asking you, how could they do that? Why are you not angry? And for those who do participate in this demonic dialogue, I'm not sure that you would even be watching this right now, but just in case you found yourself curious to hear what I had to say, before you start going in about how I'm wrong and I'm a demon and I don't have the Holy Spirit and I'm doing devil's work and whatever else, have you ever questioned why you think that anything that is not of what you were taught is demonic? Have you ever questioned the devil that lives inside of you? Have you ever wondered that perhaps it's demonic that you judge people that you don't even know, that you assassinate the character of people that you don't even know, that you go to church and you claim to love your neighbor, to help your neighbor, but you are so quick to judge, criticize, and shame your neighbor, that you are so easily swayed to believe whatever agenda is handed to you because you won't even think for yourself. But sure, everyone else is demonic. No, babe, the demon is living inside of you and you're too scared to even face it. The difference is those of us who went to hell and back faced the demons within us and we took control of that. That's the difference. If you're afraid of the dark, just say that. You're not alone. It is scary. It's not for everybody, and a lot of people get lost there. If it's not for you, it's not for you. Go about your life and go about your day. But the projection that you are doing is that you want to dismiss and minimize the importance of this work because you are not even willing to go on that journey for yourself. That's what's actually happening. Sure, it's demonic that I look at the stars and that I look at the patterns of the universe and that I talk to God directly instead of having to talk to someone else whose intentions may not be pure, that I prefer to build a relationship with the divine that isn't through a book but through personal experience. That's demonic. But when we talk about the pedophilia, when we talk about the rape and abuse of children, when we talk about the abuse in your own homes after you get home from church, that's just a family secret. That's not demonic. There is a bit of paradox and contradiction there that is showing your own misunderstanding of perhaps what that energy looks like, perhaps how close it is to you that you aren't even able to see it anymore because you're so focused on other people who aren't even bothering with you. And maybe that's why you're actually mad. So again, I wrote something that I want to share with you. I didn't plan to share this, but here we are. And I'm sharing it because I am someone who, for my entire life, felt othered. I have experienced so many instances of people who have misunderstood, misjudged, and misperceived me. They take me at whatever they decide I am. They try to smile in my face, but then have already decided they don't like me and are just waiting for a reason to validate that. There is a lot of my life that felt like I was having to shapeshift and contort in order to fit the mold that was handed to me by society, by family, by friends, by lovers, by whoever I felt like I needed to be approved by in order to feel safe and belong. And it was suffocating. It was demeaning, and it was such a level of self-disrespect that I understand why I acquiesced to all of that. But in hindsight, I was trying to win over people who would have never accepted me anyway. And so when I went on this journey, which started a very long time ago, that's when I started to really understand and know who I am underneath the mask, underneath the persona. And when I was asked to be more public with this work in 2020, all of that criticism and judgment turned all the way up, as you can imagine. Now I'm being called all kinds of names. I'm losing friends who all of a sudden act like they don't know who I am. Meanwhile, I'm connecting with people who actually care about the soul of a person, who care to know the heart of a person. And I deepen the relationships with people who are already in my life, regardless of whether or not they agreed with my methods or the way I was going on a journey to find myself and God. They led with curiosity. They wanted to understand. They wanted to learn instead of just throwing me into a lump bucket of this is who you are now. There is a refinement and filter process that happens on this journey that can be really hard for those of you who have experienced it. You already know. That's why a lot of people would rather not do it. They want to maintain the persona that gives them the gratification and the validation and the belonging that they so desperately need. But they're not even getting to be themselves. They have to be whoever someone else decided you have to be in order to be here. That's not love, by the way. Love does not live there. But it's your life, it's your journey, and that's the difference between you and I. I will never coerce you. I will never manipulate you. I will never force you to take on a path that is not aligned with who or what you want. I'll just leave you the fuck alone because it's none of my business. But you don't do the same for people like me. You want to change me. You want me to be like you. You want to minimize and demonize who I am and the type of work that I do when you have no idea what that work even looks like. You have no idea the type of impact that work has because you never sat with someone who was experiencing a light bulb moment of the things that have been holding them back their whole lives, the freedom and liberation that comes when you finally let go of the heaviness and the weight and the shame and the guilt and the fear, which is what you feed off of, that has been sucking their energy dry for a long time. You don't see those transformations because they're personal, they're intimate, they're vulnerable. But I see it a lot. I've seen it hundreds of times. I've been privileged to guide people into that transformation hundreds of times. So I know the power of this work. I know it's not demonic. With that said, this is what I wrote. My God may not be your God, but it is still God. We experience different expressions of the same God in order to observe God in all its forms. Just like a drop from the ocean is still the ocean, so your God is still my God, because they all lead back to the same source. And so your prophet is my prophet is God, because it all comes from the same seed. Many roots, many branches, one tree. So why do you crave to carve out my limb? Because I see a different point of view. I grew this way. It was in my DNA. I see the left, you see the right. Together the tree sees all. Branches of the same tree, the same seed, the same source, the same God. And therefore the branch is always part of the tree You are not of God, you are God. As the stars are the light of the sky, you are the eyes of the mother. If you cannot be it without it, then you are it. So quantumly entangled that it merges into one and combusts into a whole new world. Now, for today's episode, I'm going to close with a few things that I think are actually demonic, just so we can be clear. Number 1, befriending someone you don't like. For what? That's manipulative and stupid. Lying in order to get the outcome that you desire. Also manipulative. Energy vampires who siphon and harvest other people's energy for their own gain. Abuse of all kinds, and especially justifying the abuse of children. Hurting animals. Profit over people. Making a judgment about people you don't actually know. And creating a hierarchy of humans, whether it's through race, gender, religion, or otherwise. That's just my 2 cents. I think those things are pretty demonic, but you know what? That's just my opinion. So, hopefully you learned something today. Hopefully something allowed you to express yourself, to open up that throat, to no longer be afraid, to be who you are, because this is your life. And the reason I'm passionate about this is because when someone blocks or abuses your ability for self-expression, they are stealing your life force from you. Do not allow anyone to create fear in being who you are. It's your life, and you need to start fighting for it. You need to care enough about it that you fight for it. Take care of yourself.